Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to Helping My Gifted Child Succeed. This is the second in our Gifted Education series, so I'm very happy to have you with me this evening. My name is Dr. Jo Tuitt, and I have been in the field of gifted education for about 33 years now. It always stuns me to say that number. It doesn't seem like it's been that long. To give you just a little bit of information about myself, my educational background is a bit varied with undergraduate degrees in both business administration and sociology. I have a master's degree in educational administration and a doctorate in educational leadership with a certification in high ability education. Lending context to my educational background, though, would be my children. I have four kiddos who have and are kind of running the educational gambit, if you will, from requiring special education services to high achieving. I have a creative thinker and a gifted or high ability learner. So they've given me that personal parent perspective. So that's enough about me. Let's go ahead and jump right into the presentation as I want to be very respectful of your time tonight. Much of my presentation this evening uses the resources that you see on the screen there. Particularly like to point out the very top one there, A Parent's Guide to Gifted Children. Fantastic guide. And the one right underneath that, the parent guide that's on the website for the Indiana Association for the Gifted and the National Association for Gifted Children. I would highly recommend all of those. Likewise, if you're interested in reading further about high ability and creativity, I recommend any of the scholarly work by Dr. Lisa Rubenstein. Tonight, we're going to cover the topics that you see listed there on your screen. So we're going to start off and review some definitions and characteristics of high achievers, high ability or gifted learners, and creative thinkers. If you attended the last presentation that I did in this, I guess it would be the first one rather in this series. It's going to be a little bit of a review, but I promise it'll be very fast. So just hang out with me for a moment there. And then the next three topics there, motivation and learning, developing a growth mindset, and dealing with challenges. They may seem very different topics, but they're all important components in helping our gifted children be successful. Well, I've geared tonight's presentation a little bit more toward that elementary school age set. Please don't bug out on me because everything that I'm going to share with you today is very applicable to middle school and high school students as well. And you can implement these ideas and processes really at any age. So before I get started, like I said, I'd like to review those definitions. So let me go ahead and advance the screen there. All right, first we have our high achievers. High achievers tend to exercise grit. So what does that mean? I believe Angela Lee Duckworth, who is a psychologist at the University of Pennsylvania, kind of describes it best. I'm going to quote her exactly. She says, "Grit is passion and sustained perseverance applied in achieving long-term and meaningful goals." Our high achievers also need to achieve. They seek out challenges for their own sake. It's not just that they want to achieve, they actually feel a need to achieve. I'm so sorry, I'm struggling a little bit with a cold coming on, so I apologize for the cough. Our high achievers also listen and hear. They understand that brilliant ideas come from unexpected places and that listening helps them find those. So they really mastered or nearly mastered that skill of listening and hearing those great ideas. And then our high achievers are also action oriented. They tend to plan and kind of plot out every action that they possibly can. They listen, as I already mentioned, and are able to spot those different opportunities that they can then either immediately act upon or create their plan to act upon. Next, we have our high ability and or gifted and talented. These two terms, high ability and gifted and talented, are kind of used interchangeably. Kind of depends on where you live in the United States as to which term is used most often. Here in Indiana, we use the term high ability. You'll probably catch me tonight utilizing both terms kind of, like I said, interchangeably. Depending on which researcher you follow, anywhere from 5 to 10% of the population is identified as high ability or gifted and talented. The National Association for Gifted Children define gifted or high ability as someone who shows or at least has the potential for showing an exceptional level of performance in one or more areas. Indiana's definition goes on to clarify that just a little bit more in stating that it's performing in one or more of the specific domains listed on the screen there: general intellectual, general creative, specific academic, technical and practical arts, or visual and performing arts. So it's showing potential for performing at an outstanding level, or actually performing at an outstanding level at one of those domains. And then they clarify that further by saying, when compared to other students of the same age, environment, or experience level. So again, they just go into a little bit more detail, but very much following the definition from the National Association for the Gifted. And then our creative thinkers. I love this definition. I found it on a website for a Singapore Child Center, if you can imagine, but I love this definition. It says, a creative thinker is someone who can come up with new ideas, think in original ways, and explore uncharted territory. Creative thinkers look at things from different perspectives and ask questions that others may not even think about. Researchers in the field of creativity have almost universally agreed that creativity includes both originality and effectiveness. However, there's a researcher by the last name of maybe Carrazza, I think it is, who argued that the definition is just a bit too narrow because it only focuses on that static creative achieve, the output piece, and didn't consider the dynamic nature of the process. And Dr. Lisa Rubinstein, who I mentioned earlier, she supports that idea, and she said that creativity is not just exhibited in the final unique and useful product, but also is seen throughout the process. So again, not only in the outcome, but in the journey to that outcome. So if we look at all of these things in kind of that broad picture sense, creativity includes originality, it includes effectiveness, the process or the journey, as well as that final output. Now that we've kind of laid some working definitions to each of those categories of learners, let's just very, very quickly take a look at some of their characteristics side by side. So you'll see here we have the high achievers on the left, our high ability or gifted learners in the middle, and our creative thinkers on the far right. I'm not going to go through all of these, but I do want to point out just a couple of them. You'll see about midway down the screen there that our high achievers tend to learn with ease, and they need about 6 to 8 repetitions in order to master a topic. Our gifted or high ability learners, they already know the material, and they only need 1 to 3 repetitions to master it. For our creative thinkers, they're questioning what if, and they question even the need for mastery. So again, you can see very different perspectives and needs right there. Let's see, let's pick out maybe 1 or 2 more. Let's go all the way to the bottom. Our high achievers, they get A's. That's their focus. That's important to them. They tend to seek out those A's. Our gifted or high ability learners, they may or may not be motivated by grades. Same with our creative thinkers. Again, they may or may not be motivated by grades. Our high achievers enjoy school. Our Gifted high ability learners, they enjoy self-directed learning, and our creative thinkers, they enjoy creating. So one other characteristic set that I'd like to mention as it relates to social interactions is that our high achievers enjoy the company of age peers. So they tend to hang out with those that are in the same grade or in the same classes that they're in. Our high ability or gifted learners, they prefer the company of their intellectual peers. So more of an idea mate rather than an age mate. They do enjoy the company of age mates when that peer group understands kind of that shared idea. And our creative thinkers prefer the company of creative peers, but you'll often see them working alone. So those are just a few ways or a few characteristics to kind of look at each of those different types of learners. These columns, though, are not mutually exclusive. A high achiever might also be a creative thinker, and a creative thinker might also be a high ability learner. So again, they're not mutually exclusive. So now let's take a look to see how they would act and interact within a classroom situation. Dr. Bertie Kingor created a set of two cartoons that kind of show this three-way comparison. I really love this. In this first cartoon here, the teacher has just announced an assignment. And you can see that high achiever on your far left. And they're sitting there thinking, what do you really want? How can they please and satisfy the teacher's intentions in that assignment? Whereas the high ability or gifted learner, they're kind of sitting there thinking about what's going to be the most interesting to me? What I would like to do is. And then our creative thinker, well, their mind is just like racing and going crazy with all of the different diverse and varied possibilities that they could possibly explore. And they're like, what about this? What about that? What about this? So again, just in the way an assignment is given to our three different learners, you can see how differently they're thinking about and approaching that assignment. In this next one, you can see how they are responding to a question. So the teacher has just posed a question to the class. The high achiever, they're like super pumped because they know the answer. They're in control of the situation. So they're ready to go. Our gifted learner considers all of the different nuances and alternative perspectives. And they're sitting there thinking, well, the question could mean this, or it might suggest that, or another way to say it is this. And so they're working through all of those things. Our creative thinker is still obsessed with the seemingly endless possibilities of the earlier assignment. And they're concentrating so much on that they've totally missed the teacher's question. So again, you can see how these three different learners could potentially respond and react to just a question being posed in the classroom. Did you see your child in any of these definitions? You can drop that in the chat box if you want. And how does their classroom behavior, what you know, what you've witnessed of your students' classroom behavior, how does that match up with the cartoons that we just went over? Do you see similarities or do you see the differences? So now we're going to go ahead and move on to talk about and examine. Oops, did somebody just drop something in the chat box? Sorry about that. So now we're going to go ahead and define, so sorry. We're going to begin examining our three topics for tonight. And again, that was motivation and learning, developing a growth mindset, and dealing with challenges. When are we motivated to do our best? When are you motivated to do your best? Drop that in the chat box. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and jump back in. Um, when are we motivated to do our best? A lot of times we're motivated when we have the ability to do something. We're motivated when we can see the value or we can see the purpose in something. And we're motivated when we're interested in whatever the topic or action might be. And our kids are just like us. One of the ways we can help our students, our kids, is to help them to develop their interests. And again, this is thinking particularly of that younger group, but again, it's definitely um, uh, applicable to our middle school and high school students as well. So you may be wondering then how you find subjects and activities that will interest your child. And there are several different ways that I kind of like to explore with you tonight. One of those is interest inventories. Things that, then there are some things that you can do at home, working with family, friends, neighbors, and coworkers. And then, of course, there are classes and enrichment activities, which can then be linked back to education. So let's go ahead and dive into these. Interest inventories. I don't know if you've worked on these, but these are actually pretty helpful, and I've used them with my elementary school children all the way up through high school level. Sometimes they didn't know I was using an interest inventory as I was asking them questions on the sly, but they're actually really helpful, and you can find a wide variety of these for free online. I just go to my search browser and type in interest inventories free. And you'll see a whole bunch of them that'll come up. They come in a lot of different styles, broad ranges in questions and topics, and for all different ages and ability levels. On the screen there, you see three different ones that I've used. On the one in the far left corner, that one is for a high school student, and it's asking questions about school and career options and interests. The one there in the center is for more of a lower elementary student. It's using simple words and pictures to ask what the student likes to read about. And then the one on the far right-hand side, that was for more of an upper elementary, lower middle school student asking questions about their likes and their dislikes and their dreams and posing some what would you do type scenarios. So these inventories can then guide you and your child as you begin talking about and identifying their interests. Another way of helping your child to discover their interest is by seeking um, different things at home and then within the community. So, what are some things we can do at home to help our children explore their interest and engage in learning? Um, the pictures, I think, give it away a little bit. Of course, we have visiting museums. Many museums offer free days around holidays and or during the summer when kids seem to experience boredom, which is very helpful as a parent, but can be an option year round to go and explore and to let your kids kind of dive into some of those different areas to again looking for the things that interest them. Visiting libraries, they offer great programs, story time, and of course have lots of different books and magazines, maps to explore. If it's possible to travel, that's another great way to engage your child in the learning process as well as to help them explore their interests. I've done this quite a few times with my children growing up, as they were growing up, excuse me. I would have them pick a location within a certain region of the state or within a certain region of the country. And then we would get maps, old style printed maps instead of the electronic ones. Google Maps or whatever. We would get a printed map and have them help plot the route that we would use. And then along the way, we would stop and collect artifacts like leaves and rocks, and they found fossils and shells and just lots of neat little things. And they would collect those, and then we would use those later for learning, for kind of doing deep dives to see what things were, looking at the leaf, for example, and identifying what tree it was, and also using some of it for crafting after the trip. So again, that's a really fun way. You can do that, like in your own state, across the country, or even just within your city. And then there are educational games, word searches, and the picture there listed is called Timeline. My kids love this game. And you get little cards and with pictures, and then you have to put them in order of where they were developed or invented or come up historically, in a timeline order. And of course, Scrabble is a great game working on spelling and so forth. The Quirkle, I don't know if anybody's played Quirkle. It's a great game, teaches strategy and kind of forward thinking. Smath. Now, my youngest daughter wasn't a huge fan of Smath when she was learning subtraction and addition, but it was a very helpful game. So again, those are just a few ideas with games that you can use with your kids. But again, it's another way to connect and engage in learning and to explore interests. And then finally, just going out to explore your own backyard, looking at trees and plants, and even just simply the grass, and looking at the differences in shapes, and watching the bees, and talking about their jobs. So those are also ways to explore interests. And within our communities, we have many different careers that are represented, and this can be great for both young kids and older teens as well. For young kids, you can have them pick a career that seems fun or interesting, or that match what you've observed or learned from your interest inventory. And you can arrange for your child to learn about them from your friends or from others you may meet in the community that hold those positions. They might be able to take a look inside a delivery truck and see how things are set up in there, bang a gavel in a courtroom, ice a cookie at a bakery, watch or participate in a dance class, and so forth. For the older children, they can do this as almost a job shadow for a day or longer, where they get to kind of experience the career as much as possible and kind of see behind the scenes and ask questions. If you're like me and you have kids of varying age groups and thinking about, oh my gosh, I would really like to do this, but I've got one at this age and one at this age. Ooh, that's a lot. You can actually use kind of double duty for some of this. For example, if you take your youngest child to watch or participate in a dance class, you can also take your older child and use that. So, for example, maybe your oldest child is interested in science. Then, while your youngest one is taking the dance class, you can be talking with your oldest child and helping them to research the physics of a leap or a turn or something like that. So you can kind of do double duty with some of those. But again, utilizing our families, friends, neighbors, coworkers, people within the community. And then another way of helping your child discover their interests is through classes and enrichment activities. So for classes, of course, we have the summer school programs that many of our hometown high schools offer, and elementary schools as well. There are tons of online classes, especially since COVID. There's kind of been a boom in that part of the educational field. So there are lots of online programs that you can utilize. And then in terms of enrichment programs, of course, there's your school systems may offer some. Ball State has some fantastic programs that they do. I know they have a journalism enrichment program, math enrichment. Students can come and spend a day with the Code Red dancers. There's football and volleyball camps as well. So again, lots of opportunities with Ball State. The Indiana Academy, which is the school I'm with, we offer some summer enrichment programs as well as some during the school year, both programs that are offered here on campus and those that we can bring to the school systems. So again, that's another resource. The Purdue Jerry program, Jerry stands for Gifted Education Research and Resource Institute. That's at Purdue University. They have some fantastic summer programs, both day and camp style. So they would be another resource to look at, as well as Northwestern University Center for Talent Development. So again, these are just a couple of quick ones that are in the state or near the state that I can recommend, but they're, again, a great way to help your student kind of explore different interests. You can see the pictures on the screen. A lot of those are of my youngest daughter. It's a few years old. She's a senior in high school now. But when she was younger and we were trying to help her discover her interests, she did a lot of enrichment programs. You can see her learning there on the left. She was learning about architecture through building a house out of graham crackers. You can see her, can't really recall what she's doing in the next picture there, but she learned about games that are played around the world. And so she was learning about different cultures and what was important to those cultures as demonstrated through their games. She took a poetry writing workshop. On the far right there, she's dissecting a frog. It was a dissection enrichment program, and they dissected several things that day, and she absolutely loved that enrichment program. She did a cooking enrichment program and dance workshops. Lots of different varieties out there. And we tried to get her into a lot of different ones so that she could really explore those interests and see what she was passionate about. They helped her also. Well, it helped us to see those interests. It also helped her to understand what her interests were, what her passions were. And she was able to also begin building a knowledge base within those areas of interest. As your child is exploring, it's important to be able to link their interest to education. So let's say that your child is interested in butterflies, baseball, and or back walkovers. How do you link those? So we're going to use those as our example to talk about how we link interests and education. So let's use the butterfly there as our first example. So let's say you're in the backyard, your child's fascinated watching butterflies. So some ways you can link it to education is to talk about and help them look up the different types of butterflies. You can look up the butterfly life cycle. You can even purchase these little kits where they can watch then the butterfly go through its life cycle from egg and caterpillar and so forth. You can talk about where they live and what they eat. You can teach them how to hold a butterfly without hurting their wings. And you can talk about aspects of flight for the butterfly, how they're able to fly. With baseball, let's say your child's interested in baseball. You can help them kind of do some deep dives on, find out where the teams are from and talk about the geography and how height and elevation can affect a ball player's performance level. You can seek out the players' hometowns in the map and see if there are clusters of players from different regions. You can learn the history of the team's names, study the physics of a knuckleball, curveball. So again, those are a few ways of taking an interest and linking to education. And then the last one there, the back walkover. You could help your child look at how old someone should be before learning this. What skill sets required? Are there different variations, different ways to do a back walkover? They can study the science of it, what it takes to get the legs up and over, for example. What muscles are you engaging? So again, just a few thoughts on how you might link a back walkover to education. As parents, we do not have to be experts, thank goodness. We just have to be willing to explore alongside our children, which can also be a great bonding experience as well. So that's a little bit about linking interest to education. So next, let's go ahead and transition to talking about a growth mindset. You'll excuse me for just a moment. It was about 30 years ago or so, maybe a little bit over 30 years ago, when Dr. Carol Dweck from Stanford University and her research team started looking at the attitude of students when it came to failure. And out of that grew the term growth mindset. So, what is growth mindset? Growth mindset is where you thrive on challenge. You don't see failure as a way to describe yourself, but as a springboard for growth and developing your abilities. Simply put, it means you believe that your basic abilities will grow and improve through hard work and help from others. Mueller, and Dweck assert that a student's beliefs about intelligence kind of fall along a continuum, with growth mindset, where intelligence is considered malleable, kind of like a muscle on one end, and fixed mindset, where intelligence is considered static and unchanging on the other. So it's on a continuum. And Dweck asserts that where a student sits along this continuum has implications for their motivation and for their success. So let's take a look here and compare these two, the growth mindset and the fixed mindset. If something, let's say something doesn't work, right? So that fixed mindset is sitting there thinking, I can't do this. Can't do it. Doesn't work. Can't do it. The growth mindset approach is, well, that didn't work, so I need to try a different strategy. When contemplating a task, for example, the fixed mindset says, good enough, it's done, it's good enough. And the growth mindset is thinking, is this really my best work? When faced with a challenge, the fixed mindset is, but this is too hard. And they'll typically back out. The growth mindset approaches it as if, yeah, this is going to take some time and effort, but let's get it done. And then let me do just one more of kind of a self-assessment type situation. The fixed mindset in their self-assessment is thinking, I'm only good at certain things, and that's it. The growth mindset is thinking, I can be good at anything. This is what I'm good at now, but I can be good at anything. So how do we develop a growth mindset in our children? So this is kind of one of those big areas. Kind of it's been trending for just a little while now. And if you're interested in reading more about some different aspects of growth mindset. Dante Dixon, he's a researcher out of Michigan, I believe. He's done some interesting work on hope and growth mindset, as well as I believe growth mindset and GPA. So some different aspects of mindset. So anyway, I just want to toss that out there. If you're interested in learning more about it, Dante Dixon would be an excellent resource. Um, but to help them develop this growth mindset, first, I think it's really important to help them listen to their internal dialogue. If you hear them saying a lot, what if I fail? If I don't try, nobody will see me fail. The first step then would be to start changing those words to change the mindset. Talk talking back or talking with your student using that growth mindset voice, because if they hear you using that growth mindset voice, eventually they're going to begin using that mindset voice too. So if they're hearing you say, not sure I can do it, but it's worth a try, I'm going to do it. Or maybe they hear you say, if I don't try at all, it is a failure. There's no dignity in that. So I'm going to try. Again, just hearing you as their parent, the most influential person in their life, saying these things as you're talking about your own experiences using that growth mindset voice, they're going to start adapting to that as well. Teach them to try out new ideas and approaches to problem solving. So keep trying to solve a hard problem instead of, you know, giving up, quitting. Even if they can't see an end solution, there's so much learning and growth that comes through trying and keeping trying, even if it doesn't end with the solution. Encouraging them to stop seeking the approval of others. Boy, that is a hard one. All four of my kiddos have struggled with comparing themselves to others and trying to teach them not to compare themselves to others, but just to compare themselves to themselves. That is a very difficult one, and that takes a lot of at least with my kiddos, it took a lot of time. And every time I would hear them comparing themselves to others, I would say, okay, but how does that compare to you a year ago? How does that compare to you 6 months ago? So refocusing it on comparing to themselves historically and where they see themselves in the future. Your kiddo to replace the word failing with learning. One of my daughters, I believe it was her second grade teacher, she taught the kids that fail meant first attempt and learning. My daughter to this day still uses that. If she doesn't succeed in what she's trying to do, she's like, well, that was just my first attempt in learning. Let's try something different. And she taught the kids that mistakes help their brains grow. And I think that was a wonderful gift that teacher gave to her students. And then take growth mindset action. What I mean by that is encourage your kiddos to take on those new challenges, to engage in new situations, and keep practicing, keep working at it. As parents, we don't like to see our kids fail. We don't like to see them struggle, but it's in those moments where the most growth can occur. And this graphic here, I think, is a great example. It's kind of the goal of growth mindset. A child who isn't afraid to try, isn't afraid to struggle, isn't afraid to fail, because they know that struggle, mistakes, and failure are all a positive part of learning. So what is contributing to the challenges? Um, this is a question that I'm so sorry. We're transitioning now to dealing with challenges. Um, so first we need to kind of understand the challenge. So what is contributing to the challenges? Is your child bored? Are they too challenged? Is there a learning issue? Is your child just not interested in school? Or maybe it's just not interested in cleaning their room, whatever that challenge piece may be there. Is your child overwhelmed because of perfectionism? Um, is your child troubled by their challenge? Knowing this and the answers to these questions here are going to help you to kind of develop what your approach as the parent will be. If it's going to take time and patience to work through this and to develop the strategy that you're going to use as your approach to helping them deal with challenges. The more strategies your child has, the more successful they're going to be in handling the different types of challenges that they're facing throughout life. I'm going to touch just very briefly as we're getting close on our time here. So I'm going to just touch very briefly on underachievement and four potential contributors to that. And those contributors are organization, motivation, study skills, and time management, which kind of go hand in hand, and then perfectionism. But I'm not going to go too much into perfectionism because I do have a session focusing just on that coming up in this series on January 22nd. So first, let's define underachievement. According to the National Association for Gifted Children, underachievement is the unanticipated difference between accomplishment or achievement and ability. So, the difference between achievement and ability. It can manifest in different ways, such as failure to turn in assignments on time, or not attending or participating in classes, or lots of different ways. So, basically, showing a disengagement from the educational process. All students from time to time may experience short-term lapses in achievement, but when the performance drops substantially over a really short period of time, that's when it really needs quick attention. Underachievement can have one or it can have many different causes interwoven together. I'm going to give you a few examples of what some causes can be, though this is by no means an exhaustive list. But some of those causes to underachievement can include social issues such as peer pressure or bullying, psychological issues such as sensitivity or perfectionism, which again is super common among high achieving, high ability, and creative students. Undiagnosed learning challenges, lack of interest in the curriculum, or a curriculum that's not challenging or engaging enough. Low teacher expectations. And this happens especially with our twice exceptional students, students who are marginalized, such as those who are members of a racial or ethnic minority, and students from low income backgrounds. So again, that's not an exhaustive list, but gives you some ideas of what some of those causes of underachievement can include. So, what can we do as parents to help our children with underachievement? Um, my first step is always to talk to my kiddo. Um, Try to hear from them, from their perspective, what's going on, what they're feeling. It may be difficult. They may not be able to put words to what they're feeling, but perhaps they can give you examples or draw pictures of what's going on. Seeking input from their teachers, that is super helpful because you're seeing your student at home, they're seeing them in the school situation. And when you put those two pictures together, it can definitely kind of round it all out. And then from there, it's seeking answers and options. So, some questions that are important to ask. Does your child believe they can do the work and that they have control over how well they actually do? Um, does your child see the value in the work at school? A couple other questions to keep in mind. How has your child's teacher dealt with the underachievement so far? And have any of the teachers or the school's interventions been more successful than others? That can also help guide you. Are negative stereotypes or social pressures encouraging your child to not be smart? I remember when I was in high school, which was quite a long time ago now, it was not cool for girls to be smart. It wasn't cool for us to like school or like learning. And so we felt that we had to dumb down. It was okay for guys to be smart and like school, but not for girls. And though, that type of thing kind of ebbs and flows over time, but is there some type of stereotype or social pressure that's encouraging your child to not be smart? Are there particular areas or particular activities that your child really likes at school? And what does he or she talk about when they're excited? What does your child dislike? And what's the most difficult for them? So, kind of two sides of the same coin there. In other words, does he or she like the beginning of a project but doesn't like completing it? Do they enjoy the research part or maybe creating the final presentation? Which parts do they like? Which parts do they not like? And do you observe board behavior at home? If so, when? And does the teacher observe board behavior at school? And if so, when? So, again, just some questions to be thinking through as you're setting up to start dealing with underachievement. So, next, let's talk about those four potential contributing factors that I mentioned. We're going to start with organization. So, step back and take a look at how your child organizes things. Look at their personal space. How do they have their space organized, or do they have it organized? When they're sitting down to study, how are they preparing their space to study? When they're getting ready to talk to you about something important to them, how do they go about organizing their thoughts to share with you? So, just a few things there to kind of think through as, again, you're thinking about your child in terms of organization. So, a couple of tips to help them to grow in this area. Encourage them to select a space to study that is free of clutter and free of distractions. Maybe this is in their bedroom. Maybe it's at the dining room table. Maybe it's so sorry, my cold is really driving me crazy. So again, selecting a space, whether it's a bedroom, maybe it's next to you in your office, maybe it's a kitchen table, but a space that's clutter free and free of distractions. And then talk through with them different organization methods. Um, my kids all loved visiting an office supply store here in town and looking at the different the folders and pens and like slotted files and trying to decide then what was going to work for them. The hard part for me as a parent was letting them try to develop their own way of organizing instead of using what worked for me. Um, but it was important that I step back and let them try. So sometimes they were really effective, and sometimes their organization system they tried to put together didn't work, and so they had to refine in some cases, start all over. But it was really important to give them that opportunity to develop the method that was going to work for them. It was also important for me to help them to develop a study routine. And each one of my kiddos had very different study routines. My oldest, for example, before he could sit down and study, he had to work out. He had to get kind of that, I don't know, energy out, that teen energy out. So he would run on the treadmill or lift weights or do something for about 30 minutes just to kind of burn energy. And then he was ready to sit down and study. My one of my other kiddos, before they can study, they have to be alone for a while and have quiet time to themselves, either reading or journaling. Again, it was about 30 minutes to an hour, and then she was ready to sit down and study. So preparing to go in to study is part of developing the routine, and then how they organize themselves to actually conduct their studying. Like I said, each of my kids have very different methods. Some made sense to me, some did not. And to be transparent, it was hard for me to let them design their own systems, but it worked so much better than when I asked them to use my system. So another area to consider is whether or not motivation is a contributing factor to their challenge. There are different free online assessments you can use to help determine if your child is intrinsically or extrinsically motivated. And there's no right or wrong answer there. It's just information for us to know as parents on to understand how and what motivates them. So children that are intrinsically motivated, that just means they're motivated by an internal drive. It's something within them that encourages them, that motivates them, that pushes them. And students that are extrinsically motivated, that just means they're motivated by an external force. Perhaps it's being able to see their work hanging on the refrigerator, or it's the knowledge that they're going to get $5 for every A, or it's a great big hug from you. It's an external force. So once you know how your child is motivated, you can use this to help them tackle that challenge. Another technique is connecting the material to learning to real world application. So connecting the material they're learning to the real world application. With this particular generation right now, that is extremely important. So let's just take a quick moment to talk through an example. Let's say, for example, that your child is studying percentages in math class. A way to connect that to the real world is to take them to the mall or a shopping center and ask them to calculate the discounts advertised: 50% off, 35% off, 25% off. Have them calculate that. Or go over a job contract with them and look at what it means to get a bonus if 25% of the job is done 15 days before the benchmark. So again, just a couple of quick ideas there on ways of connecting what they're studying to real world application. Next, look at how success is defined in your home and or by your child. If A's are praised, it might be valuable to reframe this and praise the effort that goes into the grade instead of the grade itself. And then our study skills and time management, a contributing factor. That is what we're going to move to next. So I can share a few good tips for working with time management and study skills here. Specifically for time management, help them to set aside a regular time to study each day so that it becomes a habit. Every day they're going to go to wherever that location was that we talked about previously. They're going to sit down with their organized system and they're going to study at the same time every day. Help them to set daily, weekly, and semester schedules, giving time to each subject and helping them to revise it as needed, teaching them how to revise that. Help them to prioritize their daily goals, paying attention to benchmarks and deadlines. And this is a big one I see with high ability students in particular. They like to do projects like all at the last minute. There's a whole reason for that, but I won't go into that in this chat today. But helping them to understand that breaking down a long-term project into small, short-term, attainable steps over time is much better than doing it all at the last minute. Helping them to develop good study skills, organize what needs to be done is a big key to that. So, for example, they can organize what subjects they're going to work on from whatever's hardest to whatever's easiest, or maybe they want to start with the easiest and work to the hardest. They can start with the subject they love the most and work to the subject they love the least. Lots of different ways they can organize how they're going to get the work done, but talking them through that, helping them to set up that plan, and making sure they're taking breaks. Our brains need a break. I usually recommend that after about 25 minutes of work, taking a 5-minute brain break. And that means standing up, walking away from what you're doing, going even into a different room for a few minutes, get a drink, stretch, but letting the brain rest for a good 5 minutes. And then you can go back, your student can go back, jump back in and begin working. The next tip would be note taking. And I think that's a skill that is perhaps not taught to the level it should be. Helping your student to develop an abbreviation or punctuation system to help speed along note taking so that they're not writing every word out long or even typing every word out. It can go much faster and be easier to use in abbreviations. For example, I always abbreviate the word because as a B/C. And that speeds that up. So there are lots of different tricks that I'm sure you use as well when you're taking notes that we can help our kids learn. Make sure that after they take notes, that they're reading them through to make sure they make sense. Teach them that's a good practice to get into. And then have a process for starting new tasks. You see the graphic there on the screen: stop, think, plan, do. So that's one method that they can use before starting a new task. So stop what I'm doing, think about what I need to do. Do I have a checklist that I can use? Plan that. Plan the steps needed to finish the task. Fill out the checklist that I can use, and then do it. Sit down and start working. And then finally, I'm going to touch just very briefly on perfectionism as a contributing factor to underachievement. The pursuit of perfectionism isn't always bad. It gets a bad rap, but it isn't always bad. It can be a valuable driving force. And in some things, like neurosurgery, for example, it's actually essential. About 20% of the high ability population for about 20% of that high ability population, perfectionism creates problems such as a project assignment never being able to reach perfection, so they don't even turn it in. It can create procrastination and not even wanting to try or start something because they're positive they can't make it perfect. And all of these things are leading to an underachievement. So here are some ideas that I can quickly share to perhaps aid a little bit with this. Help your student to set, again, a schedule and adhere to the schedule that has a time limit on it for assignments. The goal is to complete the task, not make it perfect. So help create those timelines for completion of the work. And work with them, like I mentioned before, to divide large tasks into smaller subtasks. Help them to learn to set priorities and that not every task needs 100% of their energy. That's hard for us adults, even, but not every task needs 100% of their energy. You can help your child to gain balance and where they're investing enough time so that the task is done and it's good enough. Again, not seeking perfection, but seeking done so that they have time for activities, hobbies, friends, family, etc., because they need that balance in their life. Help them by expecting progress, not perfection. You can encourage their attempts and progress, moving toward a goal instead of moving toward perfection. And then encourage them and model the healthy self-talk. And we kind of mentioned that before, but just using the self-talk with yourself, modeling that for them, and then continuing to be the awesome parents that you are by encouraging them in that healthy self-talk. As parents, I know our kids often think that we have never made a mistake. So it's important that we talk to them about our own mistakes, allow them to see us make mistakes, have those age appropriate conversations about our mistakes and failures and how they've helped us to grow and to lead to future successes. We can talk with our kids about how the process is more important than the outcome. Often gifted kids will think something should look a certain way when it's done. And if it doesn't look that way, they'll be defeated. So sit with them, ask questions, talk with them about the process. And this is going to help them to realize that the process is as important as the outcome, sometimes more important than the outcome. Explain to them that results don't always look the way we expected them to, but that's okay. And why the process is essential. Sometimes things can go awry, so laugh with them. And kids are always looking to you and to adults in general first to react. So if you're working with your child and you make a mistake, gotta laugh with them. Be the first to laugh so they know it's okay that a mistake was made. Then talk with them about what happened. Help them to not make being perfect part of their identity. That happens a lot with our high achievers, high ability, and creative students. They make being perfect part of what defines them. Reward them for their excellent work, but not so much that they think anything less than 100% on a grade means they're not good enough. This is especially important as they get older and are exposed to that more challenging curriculum. And then final thing I'll mention is to set limits with your child, whether that's a time limit or a word count or a problem count. Setting a hard defined limit will help them from becoming hyper focused and help them learn about setting healthy boundaries. Went through a lot of material really fast right there. This evening, we've talked about and defined our high achievers, high ability gifted learners, and our creative thinkers. We talked about motivation and learning. We talked about developing a growth mindset. And we talked about dealing with some of the challenges to underachievement. I really like this quote, and I think it's super salient. What makes a child gifted and talented may not always be good grades in school, but a different way of looking at the world and learning. As parents, it's our responsibility, it's our joy, it's our challenge to help guide them, providing them with resources, remove barriers and some challenges, and so much more, so that they can fully become who they're meant to be. want to thank you so much for joining me this evening, and I hope that you'll join me for some of our future programs on gifted in our gifted education series. I'm going to stop the recording right now, and we'll be happy to talk with you and answer any questions that you might have. Again, thank you so much for joining tonight.